some time with you. Sorry, I just put some plug here. So yeah, my name is Johan Soka and I'm a CEO of TGM Research. Because I love sport in general, that I'm originally from France. Yes, I know no one is perfect, but also because of the fact that I used to live in Paris for many years. This topic is quite special for me, and I was super happy to have the chance talking about the Olympics and this global event with you today. So who is TGM Research? So TGM Research, our company, is a global leader in online market research, and we offer multi-country data collection and insight through our highly engaged online panels, but also using digital audiences available in almost any country in the world. We use technology and innovation to provide high-scale research almost everywhere. And for brands, consulting and agencies, the great chance to have quality data for their research and to get the most of the insight that they need for their marketing and also their business decision. Again, we have panel and digital audiences almost everywhere. And thanks for this today, we can reach consumers and potential consumers in more than 130 countries in the world. So today we'll talk about general interest in sports, media consumption habits for sports, and then, of course, we'll deep dive into the Olympic Games specifically, and we will be interested in in understanding how brands are performing around these major events. So this event brings millions of visitors on site in Paris, but also has exposure of billions of followers, viewers from all around the world. Here on this slide, you have the agenda of the three main parts that we'll cover today in this presentation. In first, we will look at the sport fan portrait. Secondly, we will look into the Olympics 2024 specific interest. And finally, we will be interested in Olympics 2024 sponsors and brands. On the technical side, just to let you know that this presentation is recorded and will be about 25 minutes. There will be also a Q&A session at the end, of course. So if you have any topics for discussion or any question, feel free to share already in the chat for our moderator, and we can talk about all those topics at the end. So why a webinar on sports? Well, as you know, sports have always been a huge business. The sport industry today is valued at almost $500 million, and it's booming. We have in sport business a yearly growth of 5 to 6% every year. There are many major reasons for this growth, but to name a few, the first one would be more and more emerging markets like from Asia Pacific, China, India, and in the Middle East interested into it and offering significant future opportunities for brands. And this is one of the things boosting this growth. You have probably seen over the past couple of months in Saudi Arabia, for example, how they managed to attract major football players in their leagues and how much money they are ready to inject and to invest into it. So this is definitely one of the main reasons to have all those growth driven by emerging markets. The second point would be also the development and growth of digital technologies. This can include all those new streaming services, mobile viewings, virtual reality features, and all tech giants like Amazon, Apple, Facebook, also putting more and more money into this because they really see some potential new stream of revenue. We also seen the expansion of digital gambling and betting surrounding all sport events, also boosting revenue. And finally, the growing popularity of esports, one of the fastest growing category within the sport category. We could also see this trend at TGM Research with more and more of our customers having needs in this area. This is why we have published over the few years different reports on this topic. Of course, the World Cup 2022. We have published a big report for the European Football Championship that just finished a couple of days ago. Global sport betting and so on. And this is also why we are interested today to have this webinar to look into more details about the connection between consumers and brands around the Olympics. So I mentioned about TGM Research being specializing in high-scale research. This is a good example, and this is the methodology of the survey that we will talk about today. For this study, we interviewed more than 14,000 people using online survey methodology, this from 26 different countries across 5 different regions. The biggest region here in the pool of participants is Europe, with 8,000 participants, more or less, coming from 15 different countries. Then we had LATAM, Africa, APAC, and US. So those region breakdown, this is something that we will use all over the presentation from today. So this is truly a high-scale international study, as we love to conduct at TGM Research. About the fieldwork, this took place between the 10th and the 28th of May this year, so just about 2 months ago. So let's get started and look into numbers. For this part 1, we were interested in getting to know a little bit more about our typical sport audience, who are the typical sport fans, and how to engage with them. So on the question, how interested are you in watching or following sports in general? We had 59% of respondents answered being interested in sport. Top 2 box, very interested in sport. You can see on the left that Africa and APAC are the 2 main regions with the highest level of interest. Europe and US behind, quite behind for the US, but still significant attractivity for Europe, with sport catching about 54% of the population interest. Then on the right side of this slide, we were interested in looking at gender differences. Well, not without huge surprises. Males are the one with the most interest in sports in general, with 70% interest versus 47% for females. And finally, for the age, looking at the age differences, the millennials, 25 to 44 years old, is the age group with the highest interest, 61% here. Then comes the 45 years old and plus. And finally, the Gen Z, 18 to 24 years old, and somehow the youngest generation having the least interest in sport, and capturing here only 53% of the interest. We talked about differences across region. Here's our top 10 countries from our study with the highest interest in sports. APAC and African market are leading the way. You can find here India, South Africa, and Indonesia within our top 3. One thing to mention here is obviously this market have very large population, and in the meantime, a level of competition for sport business probably not as high as you can find it in Europe or in US, region with quite a little bit of saturation level, I would say. Many brands, many business, many actors, many players. So with less saturation and competition in those emerging market and new market, we believe at TGM Research that this is definitely the market where brands should focus on if they want to find the best opportunities for growth over the next year and somehow to get the best return on investments with, let's say, a cheaper entry ticket if they want to do business there and to get the max of it. So we have now our people interested in watching or following sport, but what about the global sport event they are actually interested in and follow the most? Here, the goal was to compare the attractivity of the Olympic Games over other global events and other sports, such as football, tennis, rugby, and so on. You can see here, FIFA World Cup is a clear winner, except in the US. This is by far the most popular sport event on the planet, with 59% of the respondents who said they watch it or follow it. Then in second place, we have the Summer Olympic Games with 37% of respondents following it, according to our survey. US, Europe, and LATAM region being the most enthusiastic to watch the Olympic Games. The Winter Olympic Games, tennis and FIFA Women's World Cup complete this top 5. So on the list of sport global events that participants could choose from when they fill in the survey, we also have the Rugby World Cup, the Tour de France, the Golf Majors, Cricket World Cup, and so on. Again, we are focusing on global sport events. So we'll not go into details today, but it was interesting to see quite a few differences on the country level. And here a couple of examples. For India, for example, the Cricket World Cup is definitely the most followed global event. 76% of respondents watch it over there. Another interesting fact for you guys is for Serbia, tennis Grand Slam are the second most popular events after the World Cup. Very high score. And of course, it's probably due to the fact that they have one of the best players on earth with Novak Djokovic, generating a lot of traction for this. And finally, South Africa. So South Africa, rugby and Rugby World Cup had a huge fan base there and has a huge fan base. We have 66% of the people who watch it for this country. So obviously, the brand main goal is to connect with their audiences and potential consumers. If we have such events, they need to be there. So for this, they need to understand, obviously, which media channels are used the most by followers, viewers, and potential consumers. On the top 5 sources people typically use to follow global sport events, we find by order of importance in first, TV broadcast, with 57% usage for following global sport events. Mostly driven by older generation, very used and attached to this traditional media. Then we find YouTube and social media at 34 and 31%. And here, of course, rather driven by younger generation and 18 to 45 years old, much more tech savvy and digital audiences. Finally, TV streaming and TV in public spaces complete this top 5. So how about those audiences by region? If we look at the sources by region, we find pretty much the same top 3, but with a few noticeable differences that you can see here with this little R. TV broadcast is the #1 almost everywhere, and still very strong in Europe and Africa. More than 60% of people have quoted this one as the source #1. Then we have YouTube, which is the most powerful media used in APAC to follow global sport events. Social media is a major player in Africa and APAC for sports. Almost half of the sport fans are using social media to follow global sport events in those 2 regions. So brand definitely must be there if they want to connect with their audiences. And finally, TV in public space, still very popular in Africa with 36%, and even more if we look at South Africa with 40% of usage for following sports. So from all those insights about audiences and media sources, we have been able to draft the typical portrait of a sport enthusiast. And based on this survey data, we could identify 2 different types. The first category represents the global football enthusiast, corresponding to our 59% of people watching and following FIFA, World Cup, and football. This was from the slide I just showed before. So this typical audience for football enthusiasts is mostly represented by people from 35 to 54 years old, rather males at 62%, and mostly using traditional TV broadcast about digital platform. The second category relates to the typical target audience watching and following the Summer Olympic Games. 37% of people worldwide, as a quick refresher. So this fan base is rather made of older generation, 45 years old, with a particular strong interest from the 55 years old, quite significant part, which represent 23% of this fan base. We also observe a higher attractivity from the Olympic Games coming from female fans, 43% of the segments versus only 38% for the FIFA World Cup fans. In terms of media habits, very similar habits across football and Olympic Games. TV broadcast is still the source #1. Although it's quite interesting to mention here that even if the Olympic Games fan audience is slightly overrepresented by older generation, the social media usage remains quite strong there. 34% of Olympic Games will use it to follow the Olympics. So I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation so far. Let's now dig into the Olympic Games 2024 in Paris specifically and how engaging it will be. So before to start here, A couple of interesting facts about Paris 2024. The first one is that not all competition will happen in Paris. In fact, the surfing competition will take place in Tahiti, which is close to New Zealand and 15,000 kilometers away from Paris. So quite far. The second thing is that each Olympic medal contained a piece of iron, which was once part of the Eiffel Tower. So another noticeable fact. The official game mascot is a hat. This is the symbol of the French Revolution and freedom. Two new disciplines will make their apparition this year, breakdancing and kayak cross. And finally, the last fact, which is for me quite important and quite interesting, there was a lot of controversy in France around the possibility to swim in the river Seine or not, and if the water quality was good enough. Turned out that it was also a good inspiration for Netflix to release Under Paris, which is a movie about climate change and sharks being participants in the swimming sport events. Today, the mayor of Paris went publicly for a swim in the Seine River. That was just a couple of hours ago. A lot of media everywhere to follow it. And the goal was to prove that the water condition was satisfying after more than 1.5 billion euros spent into sustainability to clean the river. So let's see how she will react in a couple of few days, but at least she has not been bitten by sharks. That's the good news. So what are the benefits of hosting the Olympics? This is quite a burning question from anyone, not only brands, but of course, taxpayers and people involved into it. The cost benefits ratio for a city or a country to organize Olympic Games is always hard to measure. Yes, of course, there are some short-term wins and revenue coming from tourism, for example, with a few concrete examples here on this slide. You have 5 or 6, I would just mention 2. But like in London 2012, the visitors for the Olympic Games spend twice more as the average tourist. So definitely a good boost for revenue. If I look at Torino province for the Italian game, for winter game, we had, and this region saw twice more visitors during this year, also boosting the F&B industry. But historically, if you look at the numbers, the cost-benefit ratio between cost for hosting the event and all the revenue taken from it is most of the time negative, very negative somehow. And sometimes like in Athens in 2014 or Rio in 2016 with a couple of billion loss. When it's positive, the impact on the country economy level still remain very limited. Like usually, the Olympic Games are profitable when most of the infrastructure are already existing. Like in Paris, for example, in 2024, 95% of the competition will happen in already built infrastructure. So let's say a little bit less of spending and then no worry to take care of all those infrastructure because most of the time they are not so much used for the one which are newly built for this specific event. But still, almost $10 billion USD has been already spent in France for this organization of the Olympic Games, and the invoice will definitely get bigger and bigger. So the direct and indirect benefits are estimated to be for now from 1.5 to 2 billion USD, but this might decrease as soon as we have the final real cost of this event, which are published. So does it worth it? It's a very tricky question, but here again, there's very limited impact on the economy. But also in the meantime, in this specific case of France, there are many studies that are actually showing rather negative feeling from the local population and taxpayers. A lot of people will escape the city because they have seen just too much happening. So this is also something to take into consideration in this balance. So for brand, it's a different story. This event is huge, right? One of the biggest on earth and a unique occasion for brands to every 2 to 4 years connect with consumers around sport and strong values, diversity, perseverance, respect. There will be many others. And when I say 2 to 4 years, because you have the Summer Olympics, but also the Winter Games, right? The return on investment is quite complex to measure because you have short-term gain, but also long-term benefits when you build the equity of your brand and loyalty. But according to a research paper from Sport Business Journal and some food for thought for today, brands have seen typically a 54% increase in differentiation after being an official Olympic partner. For the brand image component like authenticity, prestige, and daring, this more than doubled after some of the brands became Olympic partners. So even if the real return on investment for hosting Olympic Games for a country or a city is hard to measure, this is for sure an incredible opportunity for both countries and brands to get this global exposure, to build a strong or stronger image, and to show some soft power. So this is mostly for the countries, right? So going back to our survey data here, in the first part, we looked at interest for watching sport in general. And here we have asked specifically about the Olympic Games. On the question, how would you rate your interest in the 2024 Summer Olympic Games in Paris? We had 52% of the respondents who answered they were very interested or interested. So compared to sports in general, and 59% overall interest as asked before, highly driven by the FIFA World Cup, the Olympic Games alone somehow struggle a little bit on this interest component and is perceived as less as attractive here. Even if APAC and Africa once again show the highest interest here for the Olympics, it's still much lower than the previous interest from those two regions for sport in general. That was before 72% for APAC and 80% for Africa, interest in global sport event, sport in general. Here, 65 and 64, so still high, but much lower. So therefore, those two markets drive down the level of interest for the Olympics versus sport in general in our reports and the survey from today. The slide here shows the gender and age differences on those two questions, interest in sport and interest in Olympic Games. The interest in the 2024 Olympic Games is directly correlated with age. Here you can see it. The more people get older and the more they are interested in the Olympic Games. This is the highest among the 35 years old. There is a peak for the 45 to 54 years old. And then this is the lowest on, again, those Gen Z, 18, 24 years old. On the gender level, this I mentioned it before, but the Olympic Games attractivity for female is actually quite strong and drive significantly the interest from female for sports in general. For the most enthusiastic market from our study toward the Olympics, here again is our top 10 with APAC and Africa, similarly as before, leading the way and overall showing a higher interest and the highest interest from those emerging countries for the Olympic Games. So yes, this is the global events, and that was previously rather catching most of the interest from developed markets, probably because they were regularly the main organizers for those games. They also traditionally had most of the athletes competing to it, of course, generating the interest from the population. But here we can see this switch. And nowadays, when you look at 2024, most of the attention is rather driven by emerging countries. Here, if you look at these top 10 markets, the first non-emerging country is Spain, in position number 9, and 58% of interest. But otherwise, you see APAC, Africa, and LATAM. We think this could be also a good angle for brands to somehow leverage this attractivity. Similarly as before, when I said about best return on investment for sport, here the same for the Olympics, to use those opportunities from those markets to target those top markets and increase the brand exposure over there during the events, more localization and more marketing or localized branding. Talking about localization and audiences, what are the key highlights of social media usage and behavior during the Olympics? Here we have the top 8 things people do on social media to follow the Olympics. The top 3 reasons here being by order of importance, first, to watch the Olympic highlights, quoted at 41%. Then to discover new stories about the Olympics, 39%. And finally, in third position, to get updates and information about the Olympics events. So the key takeaway here is that brands and marketers should really take advantage of this opportunity for real-time marketing. How? Here, we will not go too much into this strategy, but the idea is really to react fast and to create those compelling Olympic-related content almost in real time and based on trend and facts. This is the best way to capture attention somehow on the go, to increase the engagement with those different audiences, watching very, very closely the game, and to find a way to interact with those potential customers on the moments. So here comes the last part of our today's webinar, Olympics 2024 and Brand Association. How well are the brands connected with the Olympic Games? The Olympic Games are a global event. Of course, everyone knows about it, and a lot of money is spent by brands to increase their visibility here and maximize the impact of any partnership that they would sign off. Target audience definition, messaging, type of channels, type of call to action. There are many things that go well, and there are many things that can go wrong also. So not all these brands get the similar attention when it comes to partnering with such events. So before to look at some brand performance component here, I wanted to show you the list of official partners of the Olympic Games. We have worldwide partners, mostly international brands here. And then premium and official partners, rather a French company, but also a couple of international ones. So before to talk more about numbers here, at TGM Research, we are using AI technology to record in real time almost any type of open feedback. Brands are one of this, and this gives us a very powerful tool for such analysis. Thanks to our in-house developed survey platform, we are able to record in real time from many different languages, more than 500 brands quoted by participants for this study. So we asked the top of mind question to nearly 10,000 people on the question, thinking about the 2024 Summer Olympic Games in Paris, which one brand comes to your mind first? Nike is the most strongly associated brand with the Paris Olympic Games and nearly, well, actually more than 14% of top of mind. Then we have Adidas with nearly 12,000. And finally, Coca-Cola, Visa, and Samsung completing this top 5 of top of mind brands associated to Olympic Games in Paris. After the top of mind, we ask an extra question, which is a logical following of the brand funnel here, about the brand recall. So here we ask the respondent to name all brands that they were and they are aware of as being official Olympic partners and official Summer Olympic Games sponsor. So very similar top 5 here, but this time Coca-Cola wins with 23% of recall and perceived as the top one brand official sponsor of the Olympic Games. They are actually a sponsor, by the way. An interesting part of this slide is to see that Nike, Adidas are within this top 3 and benefited of a very high recall, 16% here and 16.5, without being actually an official sponsor or even partners of the Olympic Games. You can see here the little star quoting all brands which are actually sponsors. Here on this slide, you have the winners region on this recall question and the association to Olympic Games sponsors. Again, you can see all brand sponsors which are identified by this little star. I'm sorry if it's too small, but again, you will have the chance to look into this report after if you want to go a little bit more into details. It's a global event, and the top 3 brands are more or less the same for each region, with just a slightly different order, but more or less they are the same. Coca-Cola ranks first everywhere, except for the US. And then we have our Nike and Adidas. If we look at the top 5, we also see global brands. But if you look at Africa or Asia, it's noticeable to see Alibaba, an Asian brand, also being quite strongly scored because, of course, they are much strongly active there and have significant market share. You can see Alibaba here with position number 4 in APAC and the same in Africa, which is showing a little bit how localization can be obviously important here. So those few last slides are quite relevant and very interesting from a branding point of view. This shows the power of emotion, obviously, and how smart marketing can help to win the heart of consumers. To finish, let's talk about one business cases, which is very well known and directly involving Nike, brand we just talked about before, because they managed to have this very high score without being a sponsor. So during the Olympics 2012, Nike couldn't use the Olympic branding because they were not an official sponsor. How did they come over this challenge? By doing two things. First, Nike focused on the universal theme of greatness, avoiding direct Olympic references to avoid any issue that they could potentially face with trademarks and compliance, right? And the second thing is that they showcased diversity and individual in different athletic journey by focusing on personal effort and perseverance. So by doing this, not only they managed to capitalize on the Olympic excitement moment, but more importantly, they really managed to connect with people and inspire any ordinary person, if I may say, around the idea that greatness is within everyone's reach. It's not something which is only for superstars. So thanks to this campaign, Nike Finds Your Greatness was one of the most successful marketing tactics at all time. And today in 2024, it's still very likely that 12 years later, this association of Nike with the Olympic Games remain very strong due to this campaign, and potentially today explaining also a high score from top of mind and brand recall. So very good business case. So this is the end of the presentation. I really would like to thank you for your time, all of you today. I hope it was interesting and that this gave you some very nice insights. With this webinar, we also want to announce officially the launch of the Olympic report from TGM Research, available in a few hours on our website. So you will receive a link with feedback, and then you will be able to download this report. If you want to know more about this report and to look at specific country, or if you wish to discuss any initiative that you may have related to your brand, sports, brand equity, brand tracking, obviously feel free to reach out to us at TGM Research, and we will be happy to discuss with you. For now, we will move to the Q&A part. So if you have any question, please feel free to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuan. So everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to add your questions in the Q&A section.
Already a few questions to Yann, or still compiling? I don't see this Q&A from my side, actually.
So we have one question here on the methodology. So she asked, what methodology did TGM Research use to gather data for this Global Olympics survey?
Okay, thank you, Julian. So at TGM Research, we focus on online surveys and online methodology to get customer insight. So here, basically, we conducted the study online in a self-administrated method across 26 countries. The field work happened from the 10th to 28th of May 2024. We used our online panels and digital audiences to recruit people to take part of the survey. And we target a representative sample of adults in each of those countries, so 18 plus, where we try to be as close as the adult population in each country to reflect all the data that we got from the survey to the population extrapolation. So we had quotas on gender and age to make sure that we could have significant numbers.
Thank you, Jan. We have another questions from Fabio Martini Fabio. He asked, in terms of brand association, don't you feel that Nike and Adidas association with Olympics is due to their approach to athlete sponsoring mostly, or was there a direct connections to the Fight Ukrainians campaign proven?
It's a very good question. This one is quite hard to answer in the way that Adidas and Nike today, they are still partnering with most of the sport association worldwide. I think Nike, they are the official brand for almost 100, I think, association. So yes, they still do a lot of events. Like in Paris, Nike organized an event in Palais Brongniart where they took like very historical athletes and they made some statues. So they are not by being sponsored, they are still doing a lot of activities around the Olympic Games. So I think it's definitely one of the reasons for having such a high score. And they are also doing a lot of campaign with athletes on other different channels, not only related to Olympics. So definitely those are two sport brands, one of the two major brands. Olympic is about sports. So it's hard to connect with the proper percentage of reason for those brands to be scored by X or Y, let's say me. But definitely this past campaign really helped to get this level of notoriety. And all those association with influencers and event that happened in Paris right now definitely also help. So without being official sponsor, I know that Nike, they organized event with 40 superstars a couple of weeks ago to also promote those games. So yeah, it's let's say a multi combination of marketing efforts to make it happen. For sure, that could be a good topic for go a little bit more into details. If you want to analyze for one specific brand, what could be the reason of having such high level of scores and where those high level of scores are coming from.
Thank you, and just to add a bit, because we also launched the Global Euro survey last month, and Nike appear in our top 3 brands associated with the Euro as well. So I think not just the greatness campaign along, but also with all the efforts of the marketing team put into for those sports marketing campaigns. Yeah, and then Fabio, he said that it makes sense as a halo effect of all brand activation. It does. Yeah, I think so. Also, it's about the great branding that you've been doing. And also is the brand love, because once the brand appears to be the top of mind of the consumer, it's a big effort and time of the brand spending to build that. We have one more question from me. She asked about how important is sustainability in Olympic marketing?
Okay, it's another very interesting question. Thanks for asking. I think sustainability today is not only related to the Olympics, it's a global topic and it's a must-have for any brands. If I look at sustainability for Paris, that was actually one of the main reasons that Paris got those Olympic Games, because I mentioned about this quality of water. But one part of the deal was to invest a lot in sustainability topics for the city level, and they invested more than 1.5 billion euros, or dollars, to get this quality of the water better. So this is definitely something which is super important, even on this aspect of getting the Olympic Games. Then obviously about environmental impact from brands. Here is definitely a hot topic today. Consumers are more and more attached and more aware of all those topics. They really care about it, and they want to be customers of brand who actually care about it. If I look at all retail, and if we look at all the food industry, now consumers are really looking into details to understand how products are manufactured, where the food is coming from, and all those kind of sustainability topics. So for brands in terms of marketing, it's definitely one of the angles that they need to promote if they want to remain on the game. Maybe not to increase more of their notoriety or market share on that level, but at least not to lose and to reduce on those components. Because here we are already in a situation where if brands are not taking this train of sustainability and having a good impact on the environment, they will just simply almost die, to my opinion.
Thank you, Johan. Actually, from other reports from TGM Research, like the TGM Global Pet Care Survey in 2023 and TGM e-commerce surveys in 2023, when we asked people the most valuable factors when they shop online or they shop for their pet food purchase, the sustainability factor is in the top 3. So I think it's the sustainability is like a hot topic recently all over the world.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of potential of improvement here or areas, because obviously this topic is quite active for a long time in developed market, but this is still somehow a little bit new, emerging. So definitely there would be a lot of work to be done in that area to also promote all those topics into markets for now, let's say a little bit less exposed, but as interested, if not more interested, into those areas.
Thank you, Johan. Do we have any more questions? If no more questions, so this is the end of our webinar today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and you will receive another email to access the 26 countries report of the Olympics 2024 together with the presentation deck today. Thank you, and we look forward to welcoming you soon in our next webinars.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you everyone for being here. So have a nice Olympic Games and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.